This is Production Values, the Art of Amdram podcast, a show all about amateur dramatic and musical productions. In this series, we will follow amateur productions from the initial idea through to show week. We will include previews of upcoming shows, reviews of shows already open, and take you backstage to hear how it all comes together. Episode 7. Audio Description Services. Audio description has been available for quite a while now in professional theatre productions and home movies such as DVDs and streaming services. However, I recently became aware of the work of a lady called Georgette Vale, who has been developing a solution to providing audio description for productions staged by Wymondham Players, an amateur dramatic group based in Norfolk. Georgette is keen that this service should become widespread across the UK Amdram groups to ensure that people with sight difficulties are not excluded from amateur shows. I asked our roving reporter Seb Ransom if he could talk to Georgette about the work that she has done on audio description and how other interested groups can provide this service to their audiences. Seb caught up with Georgette via phone, and here is their chat.
Hello, faithful listener. I am here today with Georgette Vale from Wymondham Players, and we're going to be discussing the area of audio description, which is something I wasn't aware of until quite recently. So I'll let Georgette introduce herself and tell us all a bit more about audio description.
Hello, nice to be here. Basically, audio description is for visually impaired people, people who can't see, and visually impaired people very often like to go to the theatre. But there's always bits that they're going to be missing, and they're always going to be thinking, what's happening there? Or, far worse, why is everybody else laughing and I don't know what's happening? So it's just a means of being able to fill in the gaps for those people. Quite often, if a visually impaired person goes with a friend or someone else that they know, and they're sitting in the audience, the friend might be able to think on their feet and whisper, he's just done a handstand. But then often they can't hear that properly, and the rest of the audience will also hear it. And people are getting a bit disturbed and turning around saying, why do they keep whispering? And, they should be whispering in the theatre.
Yes.
And so it's really far better if it's done by somebody with just a little bit of preparation, somebody who knows the play, knows what's coming. And it's been quite mainstream in professional theatres for quite some time now. And, of course, an audio describer, it is a professional job. And in the professional theatres, you have professional audio describers. But then in the non-professional world, because I don't want to use the word amateur, for those of us that don't get paid, it's something, yes, acting is a professional job, directing is a professional job, but we're not getting paid for this. So we can still do audio description. And it's my belief that the main reason that people have never done audio description for their amateur group is simply because they never thought of it.
Well, exactly. And that's something that when we first got chatting, we connected quite recently when I was doing a show over in Ipswich at the Eastern Angles studio called The Ripple Effect. And we were chatting about this. And we said that in the modern age of lots of venues and places doing all they can to try and be accessible for people with different disabilities and impairments, they're often really great in terms of like wheelchair access or something that I was thinking of. I did a panto a few years back, and we did one of the performances as a relaxed performance, which for people kind of with learning disabilities or sensory kind of issues where they might get overwhelmed with lots of loud bangs and lighting.
That's right,
cues.
where people can get up and walk around and nobody worries about it.
Exactly. And so even though lots of places would think of that kind of way, if you like, of making it accessible to people.
What we've actually done as well for hearing impaired people, again, people often think, you have to have a signed performance for people who are deaf. Sometimes in the professional theatres as well, you have captions where you have like the subtitles going across. And that's very expensive. But for someone who is profoundly deaf and can't hear the words, but has full language, doesn't need sign language, has full English language, we've often given them the script to follow. It's not perhaps as good as having the subtitles portrayed, but it's not difficult to do, let's face it.
Yes, I think it's that way of being creative, isn't it? Thinking like what we can do to try and make it more enjoyable or more accessible for this person or that person, depending on how impaired they are, the nature of their impairment, which I think can only be a very laudable and very noble thing to do, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's just a way of thinking out of the box. For the audio description for visually impaired people, the best way to do it, as I said, without having the whisper method, you need someone with a microphone outside the main auditorium, and then the participants have a little headphone, covers one ear so that they're listening to what's going on stage, and then they're listening to the voiceover in the ear as well. Now, when we first did it in Wymondham Players, we are, as far as we know, the first amateur group, non-professional group, to ever think of doing it. No one's ever disapproved that. When we did it in 2019, we hired in the equipment for one day, and we could have purchased it. It was about £1,500 in those days, that long ago in 2019. But recently, there's been a big uptick in the market for that kind of equipment, and they're much, much cheaper now. To get the equipment, if you Google it, I suppose other search engines are available.
Yes.
But the words that you're putting into the search engine is tour guide systems. And basically they're invented for guided tours around a stately home or something where you don't want those who haven't paid to be listening in. It's also become cheaper because it's also used for simultaneous translation in churches and places like that. So there's a big market for it now. And what we would have paid £1,500 for, you can now get for £300. You can also get 5 sets for about £150, which is probably enough for you. And let's face it, that's probably within your budget these days.
Yes, if the technology is there and is available, and as you rightly say, is going down in price because we all use tech so much more now, even compared to sort of 5 or 10 years ago, which is quite recent. It's quite simple, isn't it? A lot of the time, and as you were saying, with people using similar equipment on tours at museums or days out.
Yeah.
It's almost like repurposing some of it and just going, okay,
exactly.
We can use that in a theatre. Like, why?
Absolutely. Yeah. What you do need is to be able to do it outside the auditorium. If your theatre has got a sound booth where the sound operators are working from somewhere with enclosed, then you're laughing, to be perfectly honest, because you just put an extra chair in there and the audio describer sits in there and speaks what they're seeing. What we do, we have the audio describer in the corridor and we have a camera and it's linked in and they can see on the screen. It's a computer screen, but they can see what's going on well enough to know what's happening where they're at. So if you haven't got a sound booth, you've got to find a camera system. But that's not too difficult these days either. What you do need to have for your audio describer is that you need to have someone with good diction, someone who can think on their feet if something's changed a bit. But to be perfectly honest, you've probably got those in your drama group anyway.
Well, exactly. I'm thinking, as we were talking the other day about this kind of part of it, hopefully a lot of transferable skills that people who are doing, acting on the stage would have anyway, because with the best will in the world, you can have something rehearsed and well drilled, but we're all human and, I've dropped a line or we've skipped a bit here. So
Yeah.
in a similar fashion, someone who may be, because I think I'm right in saying an audio describer ideally in an ideal world would go to quite a few rehearsals so that they're familiar with a given play.
That's it. You have to know what's happening and why it's happening. You probably don't need to be in right from the start. You certainly have to be there at the dress rehearsal and probably the techs as well. But the last few rehearsals, 4 or 5 rehearsals, so that you're familiar with the play. You're obviously reading the script as it's going along, but, it's quite easy to do. Part of the planning is what to say and getting it in the right moment. And sometimes it might be just a quick word like a look. And that's why everybody else is laughing.
Yes.
You've got to come over the laughter, but you've got to explain why they're laughing and are you just given a funny look.
Is that something you found yourself, like as you've got more experienced in doing it, sort of finding that sweet spot, if you will, between over-describing and then at the other end of things, I suppose, like under-describing so there's not enough information? When things are going very quickly, it could be a very frenetic play where there's lots happening and there's quick dialogue and there's quick action taking place. You want to, on the one hand, make sure that if you're providing the service for someone, they know what's going on. But if things are moving so fast, you might not be able to, give absolutely everything. Is it kind of just about building that picture in their heads?
But then what's happening is you're going to be putting it in your voice. And he's jumped over the settee and now he's gone underneath it and the ball's got lost. You're doing that in yourself so that the person is getting the whole feeling of what's going on. And he's dropped his trousers.
Yeah.
What kind of plays are you doing? But I think that people that have done it have fallen into the trap of trying to get far too much in and then realizing it ain't going to work.
Yeah.
However, before curtain up, you can spend quite a bit of time explaining what the set looks like, describing each person describing perhaps the costumes that they're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the play starts, you might need to say the name of the person that's come in. Lily enters, pokes face round the door. But after a bit, the person would have got used to the voice, so they'll be recognising who's speaking. But at the beginning, they would need to know who it is that the voice is coming from.
Sure.
But gradually, that gets easier with time. And to be honest, our participants, they're pleased that you've done it anyway. So a good try is better than no, we can't do that.
Yeah, and then as you do it more, like anything, you become more honed and sort of skilled in thinking, I could have done that bit a bit differently, or I could have done that bit slightly better, which, again, you'd imagine, hopefully, very transferable skills for the kind of people who would be doing stuff on stage anyway, adapting accordingly.
The other advantage that we might have over the, quotes, professional theatres is that when a run is on for 2 weeks, there'll be one day that is the audio described performance. Well, if that person can't go that day, you're done for. But we've got the equipment, we've got it set up. If the person isn't needed for audio description that day, they'll be helping with front of house.
Right.
So
that's very good to
any
have
day
that,
they're in.
Yeah, to have that flexibility.
We've got the advantage on that anytime you like, really. What we do try to do is to reserve the front seats nearest the door where the audio describer is, so that if there's a problem, somebody can just nip through quick. But if on the other days, we usually put those on the matinee, front row, right-hand side, few seats reserved for audio description. But if somebody comes on the other day, they'll be sitting wherever they're sitting in the auditorium. The sound will travel anywhere in the hall. That really isn't an issue. Most people who are visually impaired, of course, are going to have difficulties travelling, which is why very often the matinee is the most popular day that we're going to get for audio description, because very often people with night blindness can't travel at night, or they're not good at travelling on their own, whereas we're very near a bus stop. We're very near in daylight, in the matinee. That's fine. We're near the bus stop. On other days, people might need help to get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main issue that we've had, is publicising it. So you're not going to have a large number of visually impaired people that already come to your performances because you haven't got audio description. So it's going to be a question of getting it out there that we now provide audio description. You can have it put out some places. Talking newspapers are still in some places, although numbers for that are dwindling. But you could, because the newspapers are dwindling and people that have the technology, visually impaired people these days have the technology to be able to read print by it reading out to them. So sending out to talking newspapers is very much a thing of the past, although some are still going. We put it out through the local talking newspapers. We go to the local society for visually impaired people, ask them to put it out through their means. And basically, we do all that we can by putting it out on the local Facebook pages. We now do audio description for visually impaired people. If you want any more information, contact. Just getting it out there that you do that.
Well, you've perfectly anticipated what was going to be my next point there. I was about to say, you were kind enough to send me across an open letter all about audio description, to local Amdram societies. What's the best way, anyone who's listening and thinking, oh yeah, I'd love to get involved or find out some more information, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm more than happy for people to contact me. Obviously, if you're local in the Norfolk area, I'll be quite happy to come out and visit anyone in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Or perhaps parts of Suffolk as well. Happy to come along and give advice and perhaps show the equipment. Anyone further afield, I'm more than happy to talk it through over the phone. I'm more than happy to give advice at a distance. If anyone wants to contact me, you can ring me on 01953 605434. I'll repeat that. 01953 605434. And you can always leave a message and I'll get back to you. I'm more than happy to visit groups in Norfolk and perhaps bits of Suffolk and Cambridgeshire if necessary, but further afield I'll be more than happy to talk it through with anyone in the country. And let's get the word out there and get more people thinking, let's do a bit of audio description.
Yes, exactly. And people that you were talking about just now who are further afield, who just for practical purposes, you wouldn't maybe see in person. Your letter that you sent to me, I thought was very comprehensive in breaking down exactly what it is, the service that you offer, kind of questions that people might have about it are, I found anyway, as someone who didn't know about it myself, covered in that letter. Yeah, if somebody got in contact with you, you'd be happy to share that and they could look at
more
it
than happy to do that.
Yeah, look at it as something they might want to do for their own local society.
It's also been in the NODA magazine this month, which is September. NODA as in the National Operatic Dramatic Association. So I've got a little feature in there too. So if anyone wants to get my details from there, I'll be more than happy to share that with anyone. That's the whole point of getting it out there. And if at the end of the day we stop one person sitting there thinking, why is everybody laughing? that's got to be worth it, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, Georgette. I certainly found through my connection with you, found it really interesting finding out about more audio, more about audio description and what it entails. And I'm sure other listeners to the podcast who are existing within the drama sphere, the theatre sphere, would likewise find it very, very interesting too.
Let's get the word out there.
Thank you, Georgette. Cheers.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Seb. That was great. And a special thanks to Georgette for taking the time to speak to the podcast. I've put Georgette's contact details in the show notes in case you wish to make contact with her directly to talk about providing audio description services. Thank you for listening to Production Values. If you enjoyed it, please rate and share the show. This makes a big difference to how many people get to hear it. If you're involved in a production and would like it to feature on Production Values, please get in touch via email by dropping a message to info@stuarthanna.com. Details are also in the show notes.